contribution in the area of concern, the relevance of Islamic studies and social sciences in the digital age. To conclude, once again, I would like to extend my gratitude to the distinguished speakers, the Dean, the Head of Department, the Head of Study Program, the Chairperson, and the member of Organizing Committee, and all the participants. With the hope, together, protection and blessing from Allah, let's together officially open this conference by reciting Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I wish that all of you will find this conference personally rewarding, academically insightful, and professionally relevant. I thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and a pleasure for me to share some thoughts about one of the subtopics of today, religion, environment, and global movements. And I will do so from the perspective of discovering new landscapes of Islamic studies in Indonesia. And I thank the Dean, Dr. Mukharram, for the invitation. Maybe the host can share my PowerPoint. If not, I just continue. Ladies and gentlemen, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, last week, the 26th Conference of Parties on Climate Change showed really a new landscape for religious studies. It clearly showed that our environment is a common concern for the whole humanity, and that we are all aware of a global threat of climate change, a common challenge to all humanity. Happily, religious leaders and faith-based organizations are committed. There are global movements such as the Faith for Earth Initiative, the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative, the Interfaith Coalition of Climate Change Action, all operating within the United Nations Environment Programme. And within Islam, we have the Islamic Declaration on Climate Change, an initiative of the Islamic Foundation for Ecology and Environmental Sciences, meeting in Istanbul 2017, signed by 280 Muslim scholars, among them Dr. Fakhruddin Mangunjaya, who is Indonesian. When we talk about climate change and as a global challenge, Indonesia is one of the major players in this respect, both in terms of causes and solutions. Indonesia is named the third largest polluter in the world, the second biggest contributor to waste, the second highest emitter of greenhouse gas, and the second biggest deforester of the world. But Indonesia is also the first OPEC country to sign the Kyoto Protocol in 2004. It hosted, among others, the United Nations Climate Conference in Bali in 2007. It promised to control greenhouse gas emission at the meeting of the G20 leaders in 2009. And it promised to reduce plastic waste at the United Nations Ocean Conference in New York in 2007. I will come back to this issue later. So Indonesia is a major player in this respect, both in terms of causes and solutions. Indonesia is also the largest Muslim population in the world. And I see from an Islamic studies perspective quite some challenges here. In Islam, as far as I can see, and what I know from my research, there is a tension between norms and practices from a religious point of view. I was involved in a large-scale study in Bandung working on Citarum River. And that showed a clear secularization or a gap between the rule of God and the rule of man. I met several, please you can continue with the PowerPoint to the next slide. I saw a clear secularization, something very surprising to me, because normally we speak about secularization in the West. But in Indonesia, I saw a very clear secularization. For example, water engineers or economists working on environmental issues, but they don't speak about religion. And I met many religious leaders who spoke about spiritual issues, but they say, well, I'm not dealing with environment because environment is something of the government. And so we deal with spiritual issues. We don't deal with environmental issues. So a clear secularization. And I ask myself whether eco-theology can close this gap. Please move to the next slide. Now, when I speak about a gap between theory and practice, let me just give a case study. As I said already, at the Global Ocean Forum in New York in 2017, please go to the next slide. The Indonesian government promised to reduce plastic waste by 70% in the year 2025. An enormous task if you consider that Indonesia is the second largest producer of plastic waste. 7 million tons per year of plastic waste. Go to the next slide, please. 70% of the plastic waste in Indonesia is burned, producing toxic gases and black carbon that clearly contribute to climate change. Now, happily, faith-based organizations such as Nahdlatul Ulama or Muhammadiyah committed themselves to help the government in this respect. They know that religious leaders are more trusted by people than politicians. So they made a commitment to help the government in reaching that goal of the reduction of plastic waste by 70%. There are various regulations within Muhammadiyah and NU and campaigns to reduce plastic waste, such as Eco Dakwah, donation of plastic bottles to the mosque, Eco Fatwa, Eco Jihad, Eco Pesantren, Eco Mosque, and so on. During the 218 Nahdlatul Ulama's National Conference of Religious Scholars, the issue of plastic waste was discussed, and littering plastic waste, also the role of the water industry like aqua, and the Muslim scholars, they argued that plastic waste is not forbidden, strictly forbidden, haram, but littering and plastic waste is to be discouraged, makruh. But the practice is different. We do a study in Pasuruan in East Java. East Java is a place, Pasuruan is a place where the good quality water, also aqua, is getting the water there. And we found that not less than 7 Islamic boarding schools, pesantren, produce and distribute mineral water in plastic bottles. One of them, Santri, from the very old pesantren in Sidugiri, the other Al Yassini, so 7 pesantren produce plastic waste, themselves produce plastic bottles. Just one pesantren produces 7 1,500 boxes containing 25 bottles per day. That is 180,000 bottles per day, only one pesantran. So a clear gap between, on the one hand, NU claiming, okay, we try to reduce plastic waste. On the other hand, the practice of Islamic boarding schools producing a lot of plastic waste. Now, how to close the gap between theory and practice? One of the approaches that we follow is the living lab approach. Normally, a laboratory is situated in a university or in a factory. They produce clean or green technologies, and then they are brought to a village and where it is not used. So what we try to do in Pasuruan, we try to bring industrial designers to Pasuruan. We try to bring entrepreneurs to Pasuruan. We try to talk to the companies that produce plastic waste, and we bring the Islamic scholars there. And we just try to discuss issues like, okay, we have the technology to produce bottles which are eco-friendly, which are 100% degradable within a very short time. Are you willing to use them? Do the religious leaders really come to the same conclusion that plastic waste is not really harmful, but to be discouraged, if they know that there are alternative technologies? Now, are people willing to pay, let's say, 1,000 rupiah more for one bottle if they know that the bottle is eco-friendly and has the blessing of the FIAI, and so on? So there are many questions that come up here, and by this approach, we hope to close the gap between, on the one hand, the theory, on the other hand, the practice in Islam. Now, let me come to a conclusion. We were given 20 minutes, so time is short. My first conclusion, I think you can go back to the last slide. We have to realize that religions are ambivalent realities. Various dimensions of religions go into different perspectives. Maybe one slide before, one slide back, please. Religions are ambivalent realities, various dimensions, and mysticism, law, ethics can go into different directions. And as we already noted, there is clearly a tension between the theory and practice. That is why I think in Islamic studies, we must promote more empirical studies and bottom-up theology in Islam. So not a deductive type of theology, having the rulings by religious scholars and then bring them to the grassroots situation, but develop the theories bottom-up together with people in a lived religion versus the religion that we learn in schools. Third, in response to the secularization that I spoke about, and the gap between, on the one hand, the spiritual world and the material world, I think we have to balance. Balance is one of the important keywords in Islamic studies. We have to balance between the spiritual world and the material world. We have to balance between technology and theology to overcome this challenge of secularization. Last but not least, for Islamic scholars, I think there is a theological challenge here. How to understand the notion of stewardship, al-Khalifa, in terms of human nature interactions. Are humans masters of nature? You can interpret the al-Khalifa like that. So human master nature, the human beings are more important than nature. Or are human beings partners of nature? So humans and nature are more on an equal footing and they collaborate together. Or are human beings participants in nature? We cannot put ourselves against nature. We are part of nature. This is really a challenge, I think, in Islamic studies, not only Islamic studies, also in Christianity. And we have to rethink the notion of al-Khalifa. Moreover, from an Islamic studies perspective, do we opt for small solutions, back to nature, as I see in many parts in Indonesia, and we have to go back to nation, small is beautiful, or do we opt for smart solutions, green technology, clean technology? And let me end here just to remind you that medieval Muslim thinkers, just as Ibn Sina or Al-Ghazali, Ibn Rushdi, really saw a balance between revelation and rationality as compatible. So I think from an Islamic studies perspective, it is really possible to promote smart technologies, green, clean, or green technologies. Well, having said this, let me return, I give the floor back to the chair. I hope that I could make clear that in my perspective, religion, environment, and a global challenge like environment is really a new landscape of Islamic studies in Indonesia. Thank you very much. I give the floor back to the chair.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Am I audible? Okay, Alhamdulillah. First of all, I thank Allah for giving this opportunity to meet my dear friends and also virtually, and to see people like Westman and Professor Burhan and Professor Fatul Wahid and Dr. Subito and others after a long time. Secondly, I will be talking about Islamic studies and what has been its history all these years and decades. Then what are the challenges which are posed to it? And little bit I will be talking also about social sciences. Start with Islamic studies generally refers to an academic multidisciplinary studies program similar to other such programs like environmental studies, race studies, Middle East studies, urban studies, and likewise. We can understand that the scholars from diverse disciplines like history, culture, literature, art, they participate and exchange ideas pertaining to their particular field of study, as has been mentioned by Professor Said Nasser and the scholars in their scholarly books and articles. Such academic programs often include the historical study of Islam, Islamic civilization, Islamic history and historiography, Islamic law, Islamic theology, and Islamic philosophy. Specialists in the discipline, they use different methods and ranging from biblical studies, classical philology to modern history, legal history, and sociology. Orientalists and Islamic scholars alike preferred to interpret the history of Islam in a conservative way. They did not question the traditional account of the early time of Islam, of Muhammad ﷺ, and how the Quran was written and how it was compiled. In the 1970s, the revisionist school of Islamic studies questioned the uncritical adherence to traditional Islamic sources and started to develop a new picture of the earliest times of Islam by applying the historical criticism. The first attempt to understand Islam as a topic of modern scholarship as opposite to the Christological heresy was within the context of 19th century Christian European Oriental studies. In the years 1821 to 1850, the Royal Asiatic Society in England, the Societia Asiatica in France, and such other societies in Germany, and the American Oriental Society in the United States were founded. And in the second half of the 19th century, philological and historical approaches were predominant, leading in the field where German researchers like Theodor Noldicki study of the history of the Quran, and Ignaz Goldziher, whose work on the prophetic traditions. Orientalists and Islamic scholars alike preferred to interpret the history of Islam in a way they preferred to depend more on the resources which were available at that time. As I have already talked about that, how there were changes which took place in this field, and many scholars were responsible for this change. Islamic studies includes all those for whom an aspect of Islam is a major focus. Many, for example, anthropologists, sociologists, political science, and religious studies specialists maintain neutrality vis-a-vis God's existence or Islam, likewise, and other such type of subjects. Islamic studies explores how diverse interpretations are predicated on Islam, how dissent and diversity is dealt with, what scholars mean when they use terms like traditional Islam, normative and mainstream Islam. While non-Muslims in Europe can be said to have studied Islam since the 12th century, Islamic studies dates from around 1970s. Should scholars well-trained Islamic studies adjust the curriculum they teach to speak to contemporary events? Or courses on the Quran, Islamic history, Islamic religious thought, and other traditional curricula topics less relevant today? How do we make the curriculum relevant to today's undergraduates who learn and communicate largely through the internet and social media? These are some of the questions that are creatively raised in the essays that follow, edited by Courtesy Doral, Teaching Islamic Studies in the Age of ISIS, Islamophobia, and Internet. The book has been published from Indiana University, and it is one of the very important books, and it was published in 2019. So we can conclude from this book that universities can be effective discursive spaces for learning about Islam in and beyond the classroom. Classes on Islam, as the essays in the volume demonstrate, can be excellent pedagogical sources of knowledge about Islamic history, culture, literature, and societies. Beyond the curriculum, such classes on Islam that have both Muslims and non-Muslim students enrolled or structured spaces where questions and conversations can take place and students can learn from each other. They give and take between Muslims and non-Muslim students, if encouraged, can be lively and instructive. So this is a very important aspect which we have to think in this digital age, where people belonging to different denominations, they can study Islam together, and then they can exchange their ideas, and then they can just definitely have a good interaction and healthy interaction in this multipluralistic societies. And in the universities where we have people belonging to different religions. In spite of the fact that many reform attempts turned out to be fruitless, a number of them are still in operation today about changing the syllabi and making Islamic studies relevant to modern times. This is because reform projects within the sector of Islamic education involve not only politicians, but also sociologists, historians, and scholars of the Islamic faith. In Muslim majority societies, the so-called reform of Islamic education and Islamic studies is debated within the context of the modernizing Muslim societies as a whole. Already in 1970s, during the first Islamic conference for Islamic education, participants agreed that the best way to reform Islamic education would be to integrate it into the international system of education, which again was dominated by the West. While reforms in the field of Islamic education were long inspired by an overall wish for transformation and modernization in the Muslim world, motivation changed after September 11. So that was a great event in the history, and it has affected also Islamic studies and perception about Islamic studies. Despite the anti-Islam scare tactics of people like Daniel Pepys and Martin Campbell, Middle Eastern Islamic studies now is at its heyday in the Western world and could in fact be the transnationalizing vehicle with which to escape obsolete apologetics, biased polemics, or the return of vicious forms of knowledge like ethnocentrism. Therefore, a meaningful approach to Islam cannot disassociate itself from the wider historical and cultural European and North American context, embedding the contours of various political, economic, and social traditions. So this point has been highlighted by Muhammad R. Salama in his book, Islam, Orientalism, and Intellectual History, which was published in 2011. So these voices have been raised by many people, while the hegemonic role of the secondary sources and reliance on the translations within the Islam study of Islam in the United States goes a long way towards explaining why scholarship on Islam is in numerous cases missing the vital tool of consulting original material sources. So this has been also the great point that the scholars belonging to West and East, they have not been depending for their research or studies on the original sources, although there is good demand for that and it has been always there. So it has now, the discussion has focused on the subject also, that we need to go to the original sources and discover the actual meanings of Islam and not the stereotypes which have been made prevalent by people. In this multicultural world and the multi-faith societies, Islamic studies has a great value, as much work has been done already on the subject by the people like Renan, Messinon, Lewis, and they have tried to tell us how we can have a good understanding of Islam in modern times. And then there are people like Amin, Edward Said, Orkon, and many others who have challenged some of the stereotypes which were made prevalent by many Orientalists. In contradiction to the radical opposition of Pascal, Bailey, Voltaire to the figure of Muhammad in Islam, there is now change and divest of his claims to have received God's word. This is an important shift from the strictly Christian assessment of Muhammad to putting increasingly more emphasis on his human qualities. This new attitude is also the beginning of the depiction of the prophet and many other figures of the past as heroes and Genesis, the ostensibly non-religious terms that the English Enlightenment intellectuals were fond of using against the Christian conception of history. The 17th and 18th century witnessed the rise of many scholars and intellectuals who looked at the Prophet under this new light, which eventually led to more liberal and less inimical appraisals of Islam and Muslims. In England, Edward Pocock, 1604-1691, the first chairholder of Islamic studies at Oxford, published his specimen Historia Arabum, a medley of analysis and translations on the history of Islam. And there have been other attempts by many scholars after him, and they have tried to present Islam in a better way than it was presented earlier. So now, after talking about all these subjects and talking about Bruce Lawrence and George Holani and other Orientalists, I have just tried to say that in modern times, when there is a lot of change has taken place worldwide, Islamic studies has adopted to the new challenges which have been presented by modern world, like environmental challenges and women in Islam and politics in Islam, democracy in Islam. In the same way, cultural and assimilative aspects of Islam, which have been not highlighted to the extent, and above all, the dialogue, how we can enter into dialogue with people belonging to different religions. We may call it, multicultural society, or we may call it multi-faith society. And there may be people who don't believe in any religion, but to engage with them in dialogue through Islamic studies and make the course compatible to modern challenges, to have a dialogue with different stakeholders who belong to different denominations is one of the vital subjects where Islamic studies has to focus. One of the very important areas for Islamic studies is also to train the students and researchers and the teachers in order to understand the modern challenges which are being faced by people at different levels. And without just making any discrimination between the people who believe and who don't believe, believers and non-believers, the religious scholars have to present a new perspective about the problems which are emerging with every passing day. For example, violence and religion, and feminism, in the same way, environmental hazards, and in the same way, clean water and the population growth. So these are some of the important subjects where we need to engage in modern times if we want to grow with the times. In the same way, so far as social science is concerned, social sciences also need to expand their canvas, and they have not to depend wholly and solely on the methodologies presented by the natural sciences, which were in vogue in our times. But new change is needed where we can understand the new phenomena, where science will not to help us, but there is a scope for faith and there is scope for out-of-box solutions to the problems of science even, which have been created by technology. And there is imminent threat of war and then destruction of the world available, as there are a lot of weapons of mass destruction have been just produced by the superpowers, and anytime this world can face a great catastrophe. So how religion can help us in order to avoid such type of hazards in future, and how we can just convince the people and the powers that be to enter into dialogue rather than deadlock by waging wars here and there. So this is a very important point. And one important aspect of social sciences and Islamic studies in present times will be to help the people to grow intellectually, and also it has to play a very important and vital role in order to convince people to master modern techniques in media, as well as in technology, which is coming with the wake of digitalization worldwide. And Islamic studies has to utilize the modern gadgets which are available to it. And mostly we are just going by the traditional methods of teaching and learning. We need to change the strategies of teaching and what are the outcome of the teaching learning processes. And we have to assess that, and we have to project that in a very nice way. And then there are needs for intercultural studies and exchange programs between various universities at the level of students, teachers, and the research scholars. And then the credit transfer is also needed so that our students of Islamic studies, researchers, they are able to see different environments of study, and then there should be a proper arrangement for the credit transfer system in all the universities in place. And that will help us to understand the modern challenges in the East and the West, and there need to be the MOUs and such type of exchange programs in Islamic studies. And holistic approach is to be adopted to social sciences, where it has to integrate various subjects like Islamic studies and then theological studies, as well as the cultural studies and sociological studies together. The approaches which have been given so far by scholars like August Baum and then Adams and others, those worked for some time, but now we need to go for some integrative approach in this study of Islamic studies. And that integration of knowledge can be one of the viable media where we can use different methods which are available in different sciences, different spheres, disciplines, and we can integrate those methods with Islamic studies and the research in social sciences, and that is known as integration of knowledge or Islamization of knowledge, where we can enter into dialogue with different type of specialists belonging to various disciplines of social sciences and Islamic studies. One of the important areas where we need to lay much emphasis is that the sharing of the resources by different departments and the universities which are having departments of Islamic studies under the faculties and schools of social science. And we need to have a very well-knit network so that we are able to see what are the researches which are being carried at different parts of the world, so that there is no duplicity and we could avoid the, I should say, dichotomy at the level of research as well as studies. And this is very important, that we need to have an international collaboration of Islamic studies associations, and there should be programs annually, at least once in the year, so that we are able to exchange our ideas and the experiences which we have gained for the period of time while studying Islam and researching Islam and writing books on Islam, and all such areas need to be highlighted in such type of conferences and seminars and meetings. So this is a very important prospect to project for Islamic studies if it wants to cater the needs of the society and modern world, and becomes a viable subject which can have also market value, and it can help the governments and the people and the organizations at different levels to just combat the growing tendencies of violence which are being perpetrated by different non-state actors and other such type of people, so that we are able to control the menace of all these terrorist and such type of activities. And religion should not be involved in all these activities, and the religion should be getting the defense on the very earliest. And there are scholars who can come to rescue the religious studies and the name of religion from all such entanglings, and religion can play a very positive role in our society where there are different religions and there are non-believers and believers. So this can be a very great service by the Islamic studies people, and if they just join their hands with other studies of religions of the world and have a collaboration on those lines and dialogue permanently, then there is a hope that Islamic studies and social sciences can cater the needs of modern times. Otherwise, it seems sometimes that we are just going by the traditional ways of teaching, Islamic studies in our universities, our colleges, and education institutions, and we are not using the modern gadgets which are available to us. And in this age of digitalization, we need to use all the ways and means and techniques which can help us to grow intellectually and internationally and globally, and to share our experiences and our knowledge and our wisdom with all the people who are our counterparts at different parts of the world, East and West. And we have not to make this any division about that, because Islamic studies has the nature of interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and multidisciplinary subject. So Islamic studies is available at any place of the world. There are hundreds of universities where this subject is being taught, but lack of coordination is not helping us to go ahead in our part of the world, especially in the countries where there is not much accessibility of these modern gadgets, technology. So with these few important suggestions which I have made, I can say that Islamic studies has a great future, but we need to work constantly on this subject so that we are able to just project Islamic studies as an interdisciplinary subject and a transdisciplinary subject and multidisciplinary subject, and it can take help not only from the social sciences, but from natural sciences, humanities, and all other, faculties like arts, and, even management studies, and then finance and commerce. So in this way, it has to become a very holistic subject in that way, and where knowledge can be integrated with the new findings of science and social sciences, and new path baked in research which is being carried by different people at different parts of the world, and especially the role of religion in order to conserve the environment and protect the rights of the women, animals, orphans, and the marginalized sections. That is very important, and we need to incorporate all those subjects and dimensions of studies in our syllabi, and keep on changing our syllabi with every passing year, and make it compatible to our modern needs and our modern requirements. So these all methods and these all steps can help us to make Islamic studies compatible to modern times. And Indonesia, especially international, your university, that is University Taus Islam, that can become a pivotal point, and that can become a central place where from this whole reformation in Islamic studies can take place, and we can have annual conferences and seminars and such type of workshops where we can work out these areas and just concentrate on the solutions, how to make Islamic studies compatible to all times and to our times, and how we can help other disciplines to grow with ethical as well as moral aptitude, and also not lose its ground because of the happening challenges which are coming from science and technology, and especially digitalization. So with these words, I am once again very thankful to the organizers of this very important conference, especially to Professor Fathul Wahid, the Honorable Rector of the University Taus Islam, and Professor Subnatu, and Wesman, and Professor Brohan, and also Professor Muhammad Roy, and Professor Migdam, and others. Thank you very much.
Suaranya nggak keluar. No voice.
Yeah, I have just completed my lecture. Hello, am I audible?
Mr. Moderator.
I have already completed my talk now.
Oh, sorry for technical issues. So I hope everyone can hear my voice now.
Yeah,
Yes?
you're audible.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. So thank you very much, Professor Marezi, for your broad overview of the development of Islamic studies, and you gave us a kind of directions, a new direction in Islamic studies, especially in the context of modernity and modern worlds. And you talk about the importance of intersection, dialogue between the Islamic studies and social sciences. Toward the end of your presentation, you talk about the importance of interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches in Islamic studies, and you offer some suggestions on various topics that are relevant for this kind of interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches in Islamic studies. So thank you very much for your speech, Professor Marezi. And before we go to our final speaker, let me briefly inform everyone, the participants, that you can start, if you like, drop your questions in chat box for our presenters. And also we have a Q&A session after the presentation. Okay, so we have already two great presentations from our first two speakers, Professor Wyson and Professor Marezi. Now we will have our third speaker, Burhanuddin Abdul Hakim, PhD from Nur Mubarak University, Kazakhstan, and he'll be speaking about Islam and the digitalization in modern Kazakhstan. So it's very much related to our main theme of the conference. So without further ado, I would like everyone to join me in welcoming Burhanuddin Abdul Hakim, PhD. For Dr. Abdul Hakim, time is yours.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning. Distinguished professors.
Dr. Hakim,
can you hear me?
Voice, so you might need to.
Can you hear me?
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Again, assalamu alaikum. Good morning, distinguished professors, students, guests. First of all, congratulations on the organization of this conference. And I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to speak. The theme of this conference is discovering new landscape of Islamic studies and the social science in the digital age. A very relevant and important topic for today. In turn, I would like to talk about Islam and the digitalization in modern Kazakhstan. But first of all, maybe some of you do not know about Kazakhstan, where is it located, and other information. I want to give you a brief information about Kazakhstan. Sorry, I had a presentation. Can I share it or you share for me? So. From the Islamic perspective, that it's 72% of the country's population is Muslim. Kazakhstan predominantly Sunni Muslims of the Hanafi school. And also Kazakhstan is the largest Muslim country in the world with 2,700,000 square kilometers. Also, Kazakhstan is a member of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which unites more than 50 Muslim countries. Okay. Let's talk about a little bit about the entrance of the Islam into Kazakhstan. How Islam came to Kazakhstan. The penetration of Islam is in Central Asia and Kazakhstan dates back to the 7th and 8th centuries. In 714, Qutayba bin Muslim, the governor of the Arab Muslim Caliphate in Khorasan, captured the large city of Ispichab, which is in southern Kazakhstan. It was the first city which was conquered by Muslims in territory of Kazakhstan. In 751, United Arab and the Turkic army won a major victory in a 5-day war against the Chinese army in the war called Atlah, which is now in southern Kazakhstan. This victory of Arab army was the beginning of the establishment of Islam and the culture, Islamic culture in Central Asia, especially in Kazakhstan. But Kazakh people did not accept Islam immediately and became Muslims. No, it happened gradually. It took a long time for settlements in Kazakhstan to fully convert to Islam. The main reason for this was the remoteness of the cities of Kazakhstan, such as I said, Ispichab, Tarashas, Wotra, these ancient cities of Kazakhstan. They were very remote from each other. That's why it was hard to spread Islam. And of course, Islam first spread among the settled people, but it was difficult to spread the new religion among the nomadic Turks. So they lived as a nomadic Turks, and it was hard to spread because they moved from place to place, and it was easy to spread Islam, especially in cities where the people are living in the same place. And it was, yes, easier. But between the nomadic people, it was harder to spread Islam. Therefore, it can be said that the spread of Islam in south of Kazakhstan did not take place in the early century. This complex process was carried out gradually, almost until the first quarter of the 13th century. So it took 5 or 6 centuries. Also, medieval Eastern culture gave a new impetus to the development of Muslim science and the culture in Central Asia. The great thinkers like Abu Nasr al-Farabi, Islamic philosopher, and Yusuf Bala, Mahmud Kashgari, Muhammad Haidar Dulati became outstanding representatives of the science and philosophy in Central Asia, especially in Kazakhstan. Also, maybe you heard about this person, Hoja Ahmed Yassawi, which lived in the 12th century, the founder of the Yassawi Tariqa. It's also made a significant contribution to the spread of Islam among the nomadic Turks of Kazakhstan. Why? Because, as I said, when Arabs came in 7th century, they spread Islam with the traditional methods, like with Arabic language, or Persian language, Persians, and they delivered Islam directly, okay, without considering the differences of Kazakh nation or Kazakhstan. So when Khoja Ahmed Yassawi, his tariqat appeared, they used the method of the poetry. They delivered Islam to Kazakh people, nomadic people, with poetry and with some kind of they used romantic method. That's why it was very close to Kazakh people's nation. So it helped very much to spread of Islam. Also, Islam was declared the official ideology of Kazakh Khanate, founded in 15th century by Janibek and Kare. Islam, one of the ideological factors that contribute to the strengthening of the Supreme Khanate and the unification of the various Kazakh tribes into the ethnic community. So the people of Kazakh Khanate adhere to the Hanafi school of Sunni Islam. So also I want to say that the Islam helped to unite the nomadic Turks. It really helped to unite the nomadic people and to found a state. From the beginning, from the Kazakh Khanate is like a state, relied on Muslim legal norms. All Kazakh Khans, starting from the founders, Kure and Janibek, to the last Kazakh Khan, Kener, who lived in 19th century, noted that they applied to the Sharia. Okay. But in, as you know, in 20th century, in the first quarter of the 20th century, there happened the revolution, and the Soviet republics or Soviet Union has appeared, and they, of course, run the atheist politics. That's why the religious life in all Central Asian countries, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, of course, in Kazakhstan, deteriorated sharply. And the number of the mosques also decreased. And but after independence, which happened in 1991, religion began to revive. For example, in 1991, in Kazakhstan, there were 64 mosques, but in 2021, this number reached 2,716 mosques. So I want to notice that most of the mosques are located in the southern Kazakhstan. I can say that the southern Kazakhstan is more religious than the other part of the Kazakhstan because, as I said you before, the religion came from the Mauryan Nahr, which is Trans-Axania, and entered Kazakhstan through the southern Kazakhstan. That's why now in southern Kazakhstan people are more religious than the other part of Kazakhstan. So there is a spiritual administration of Kazakhstan Muslims, how Kazakhstan Muslims are administrated. The issues related to the Muslims Kazakhstan are managed by the spiritual administration of Kazakhstan Muslims. On January 12 of 1990, at the first Congress of Muslims of Kazakhstan, an independent spiritual administration of Muslims of Kazakhstan was established. So it has some objectives and aims: propagation of Islam, ensuring the correct propagation of the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, preserving the unity of Islam and the Muslim Kazakhstan, and so on. Now, when I gave you some information about Kazakhstan and the entrance of Islam in Kazakhstan, let me talk about the digitalization and innovation. The digital issue of the digitalization and the virtual world is especially important and necessary in the current pandemic era. However, there may be some Muslims, for example, we have it, and I think this problem is the same problem there is in some other countries. Maybe some Muslims who still do not very much like innovation and they consider it anti-Islamic. Innovation and the technology are key to development, which cannot be ruled out. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself was always open to innovations that were beneficial to people and did not contradict Islam. For example, in the period of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Masjid al-Nabawi was illuminated by burning palm branches. But once Sahabi Tamim ad-Dari brings oil lamps and rope from Damascus, he hangs the lamps with the shred and puts oil and wicks them. The Prophet, peace be upon him, sees that the mosque is illuminated, and he was very much liked this thing and compliments Tamim ad-Dari. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said to Tamim ad-Dari, "You enlightened Islam. May Allah enlighten you in this world and in the hereafter." Also, he changed Tamim ad-Dari's servant who hangs lamps, his name from Fat to Siraj. Siraj means light. So, Prophet Muhammad made dua for Tamim. Also, this Sahabi, Tamim ad-Dari, also he was the one who suggested to build a mimbar pulpit with 2 or 3 steps in the mosque. Also, there is a more hadith about the innovation, I think, about the fadl of knowledge. The virtue of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The virtue of the scholar over the worshipper is like my virtue over the least of you. Verily, Allah, His angels, the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth, even the ant in his hole, and the fish send blessings upon the one who teaches people that is good." Also, in Allah, in Quran says, "Waqur Rabbi zidni ilma," my Lord, increase my knowledge. So these verses, Quranic ayats, and the hadiths indicate that Islam is open to the innovations. It's open to the knowledge, and it's not just open, it's motivate to take knowledge and to be open to the new things and innovation, which is digitalization is a very much example of this thing. Okay, what about the digitalization in Kazakhstan? Of course, Kazakhstan is now very much developing in this area in digitalization. For example, the share of the textbooks translated into digital format will increase from 80% in 21 to 100 in 23, and also Kazakhstan also is also is planned to increase the training of the qualified IT specialists to 15,000 in 2023 from 6,000 in 2021. So I can say that the digitalization is very much now affecting Kazakhstan, and our government is paying very much attention to this, and also of course, this tendency is also affecting the Islamic religious life in Kazakhstan. For example, the religious, as I said, sphere is not left out of this phenomenon. Hundreds of the religious sites and YouTube channels are currently operating in Kazakhstan. Alms and zakat for mosques can also be paid through a smartphone application or through special terminals installed in mosques. In this case, I want to emphasize that we have the Kaspi application. Moderator, can you show the Kaspi? No. Yes, this is yes. You can pay the sadaqah and the zakat through these terminals, which installed in mosques. Also, there is one picture. Yes, this program called Kaspi, but I think this is very special to Kazakhstan. Now in Kazakhstan, almost all the people use this application. We call it Kaspi from the Caspian Sea. So Kazakh people, if you visit Kazakhstan, you will you will see that we now see that we now don't use cash. Even cards we don't use, we pay through the application. I don't know if you have such kind of things, but I didn't see it in other places. But it's developed. You can send it money from the grocery shop to the banks. You can use it. So Kazakhstani people now don't use cash. So also from this application, through this application, you can pay your zakat and the sadaqas to mosque. You choose the mosque, what mosque you want to make charity, and you'll send your money payment to that particular mosque. So also is yes. Now I want to talk the some applications we use in our university in Nur Mubarak. The Nur Mubarak University was founded in 2001, and it's founded under the agreement between Kazakhstan and Egypt. This like a filial of the Azhar University in Kazakhstan. We have some programs using them now. It's very important. It became very more important, especially in pandemic era. These kind of technologies, for example, we use Moodle and the Platons. We can upload there our materials, and teachers can upload their materials, tests, and other things, and students can download them and read of course. And we have the Platon's application platform. We can put their grades there, and they see that the tests that they do. And of course, digitalization. It has the bad sides and good sides. Good sides, we know it, but it has some make some challenges. For example, in pandemic era, we could not pray the Jum'ah. We could not pray Jum'ah in mosques. It lasted for 1 year. So some issues, some questions arose about that. Why some people suppose that we can pray the Jum'ah online. So Imam is in the mosque, he prays with Jama'ah or without Jama'ah, and other people at home, they pray their Jum'ah. So this pandemic era raised some problems that we did not feel it before. We did not see it before. So we had a discussion about that. So is allowed, not allowed? Is it important to be there in the mosque with a body, or you can be online? So what is the answer? So it was a very big question in our country. Also, this is a very challenges. I think the digitalization issue in the future, even now, will arise some questions that our scholars, religious scholars, have to answer it, relying on the fiqh, hadith, and the Quran. So also we can have in the future cyber imam, for example. In mosque, nobody cannot maybe some people don't go to the mosque and they can join the mosque through the IP address and make his prayer, namaz. So maybe we can see it or fantastic now, but it may happen in the future. And we have to answer these questions. And digitalization will force us to answer these questions. Can we pray online? Can we cyber imam be imam at mosque like this? Also, digitalization have the bad consequence, like development terrorism, spread of terrorism via the media, through the social medias and other platforms. You know that how the ISIS was founded in Iraq and Syria. So, and they attracted the new followers through these platforms, social medias. So it's also important, I think. And now these questions, I think that the digitalization, as I said you before, will raise some of the very important questions relating to our daily life. And we will need to answer these questions, and we will need to answer these questions and start search the answers from now. Thank you. I want to congratulate you on your wonderful conference and your organization. Thank you. I finish it.
Well, maybe I have a question to Professor Marazi. He spoke about communication between the West and the Muslim world using digital media in higher education. Now, my question to him would be that if we deal with very concrete topics, as the topic that I spoke about, environmentalism as a global challenge, and once again, I'm very inspired by the Islamic Foundation for Ecology and Environmental Sciences, where there is already within the Muslim world a global commitment. But my question to Professor Marazi would be that can you also use digital media in lawmaking, in the sense that we can learn from, for example, in Indonesia? I talked about the issue of plastic waste. I see how NU tries to formulate regulations about that. But can we also learn, for example, in lawmaking from other countries and other Muslim communities where they dealt with the same issue, and where maybe they came up with other laws and regulations? So using digital media also in developing Islamic law.
Yes, thank you very much for this very interesting and very, I should say, pertinent question. And we can do this as in modern times, medical scientists are using the technology for making surgeries online. And a lot of virtual transactions are taking place worldwide in almost all the subjects and disciplines. Why not in Islamic law? It is quite possible. Even we can just get guidance online from the stalwart scholars of law of Islam, Sharia, and this is a very prospective suggestion which you have given, and as I also endorse this, that can be done, and that should be done, because we are having problems sometimes in order to interpret Islam and Islamic Sharia in the modern context, when we are facing many problems in this digital age. So at that time, the best solution will be to use these digital platforms to educate people about various dimensions of Islamic law, and this is new forms, how we can make an ijtihad at a global level, and to know what other such type of activities are taking place in different parts of the world. For example, we have Jeddah Academy of Fiqh Academy. We have American Fiqh Academy. Then we have Indian Fiqh Academy. So they are doing ijtihad, and they are doing a lot of work on Islamic law simultaneously. But in order to know what is happening at different places on the matters about law, so that needs to be used, and that needs to be availed, and that can be utilized for a better understanding of Islamic law at a global level. And I am for this, I support this, that we should use the digitalization and the digital platforms for developing Islamic law, and especially the ijtihad which is going on at individual as well as collective levels at different parts of the Muslim world. That needs to be taken care of, and that needs to be just availed by other groups which are not aware about that. And the best platform for that will be the digital platform. So I endorse this, and I subscribe to this view, and this is a very good suggestion for futuristic vision about Islamic law and Sharia as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. Okay, about moderation. Now we are speaking nowadays in this period. We speak a lot about the moderation, especially. I think it's a kind of complex, dear brothers and sisters. This kind of complex that what others think about us, what we think about us. Does West care about what we think, what the East think about it? No, of course, they live their lives. But we all always think that what others think about us. I think we have to live according to the Islam and the moderation. Of course, moderation is needed, but this moderation does not reach the point where we can contradict the Islam. When if we follow the moderation, being moderated blindly, we can reach that point where we can contradict Islam and we can lose the foundation of Islam. Some issues about related to the moderation. For example, I want to give you an example. If you know the Fathullah Gulen, they have the Jama'ah, the group, Islamic group. It's very active in Turkey. It was very active, and it's also active in Europe, USA, and Central Asia. So they propagate the moderated Islam. And as I said, they reached that point where they started to contradict the basics of the Islam. For example, not wearing hijab and other things. So my answer is we have to focus on the Islam and its basics, not what others think about us. And of course, we need to be moderated and civilized. But we don't have to be very much interested and lose some basics of the situation. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to say something. First of all, how to make Islamic studies mainstream to percolate down to the mainstream Muslim society, because I feel that the Islamic studies so far has been they were living in the ivory towers and they had no impact on the masses. It was an intellectual effort, elite effort. Only they were just interested in that. Some people go for masters, PhDs, and this and that. But what was the impact of this Islamic learning, which was coming out of these all studies? It was not affecting our society at all. And it has never become mainstream. So mainstream has been always the clerical approach to Islam, and ulama and the scholars, religious, I should say seminaries, those have been at the central stage in mainstream Islam. But I think that the Islamic studies discipline can pave the way for a greater dialogue between the different stakeholders of society and the actual approach to Islamic problems in modern times. And I also accept what Burhan has said, rightly, Professor Burhan has said, that we don't need to be that moderate that when we can compromise with the basic principles of Islam. Tawheed and other such type of important principles of Islam or the Islamic ethics. So while being very much grounded in our own faith and ethos, we can try to influence the mainstream Muslim society so that they are also able to understand the modern challenges and to live according to the modern challenges and face those with a great confidence. So in this way, Islamic studies and the universities, especially universities through Islamic studies, can help a great deal in order to make Islamic understanding and learning about the Islamic issues a mainstream project. And in this way, they can influence their societies in order to grow intellectually, academically, and also spiritually, rather than remaining in the ivory towers and not having any influence on the society. So I subscribe to this view that through universities, we have to try to reach out to the society in order to make them understand the actual challenges about religion and to define and describe religion in a way which is compatible to modern times and which can also make the people to face modern challenges which are coming along with the digitalization with confidence. And that is a very important point. And if we are able to do that, then Islamic studies has a great future and which can help our society to come out from its different difficulties, and especially the religious issues which are sometimes creating a lot of confusion and dissensions among Muslims. If Islamic studies scholars through universities are able to convince the masses about the actual approach to Islam in modern times, that would be a great service, because I feel that our classical scholarship is not able to grapple with the modern challenges and come up to the expectations of modern generations. And here Islamic studies through universities can play a very important role to make it mainstream approach to Islam, which is very moderate and but without compromising with the basic ethos of Islam and its doctrinal and ethical and other such type of values. Thank you.
Sorry, I had an internet problem, so I was away for some minutes. Can you please repeat the second question, because I'm sorry I missed the second question. Once again, I simply refer to the Islamic Declaration on Climate Change, which in my view is an excellent document produced by 280 scholars, among them one Indonesian, Dr. Fakhruddin Manjunjaya. So I think this is an excellent example of where Muslim scholars using global networking to address the sustainable development goals. For myself, as I addressed in my speech, one of the issues that I see in Islamic studies is indeed the gap between theory and practice. Well, I realize that I look at it from a more Western perspective, but in Islamic studies, I see that the dominant model is very deductive. So first you have the theory, and then you apply that to practice. I would challenge you using social sciences to focus more on left religion. And so not the learn, or in the religion as it is lived, how they environmental Islamic thought and Islamology. So basically, two answers to questions. First of all, I think that there is a movement within the Muslim world called eco.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It was really a very nice occasion to meet Burhan Sahab and Vezman and all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful session. Thank you very much for organizing it.
Thank you.
See Mr. Roy also. Assalamu alaikum. Yaman Allah. Thank you. It was really very nice to see you all and meet new friends as well. Have a nice time and all the best for your conference. Yeah, inshallah. Soon we'll meet after the pandemic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
عليكم السلام. شكرا. هل تسمعني؟ شكرا جزيلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. بداية حقيق علي أن أتوجه بالتحية والتقدير الكبيرين إلى إندونيسيا وإلى شعبها العظيم، وأتمنى لهم كل النجاح والتقدم والوئام، وأن يحفظهم الله تعالى من كل سوء يا رب العالمين. كما أشكر الجامعة الإسلامية بإندونيسيا التي شرفتني بهذا اللقاء، وعلى رأسها السيد رئيس الجامعة وكافة الإطارات العاملين بها، وخاصة أولئك القائمين على تنظيم هذه الندوة المباركة، والتي أتمنى لها كل النجاح والتقدير. كما أقول الإخوة الأفاضل جميعا، يعني لا أستطيع أن أقول نحن في تونس هنا لما زلنا لم نصلي الصبح بعد، فأتمنى لكم يوما سعيدا إن شاء الله تعالى. سادتي الأفاضل في إندونيسيا وفي العالم، عنوان مداخلتي الحوار بين الأديان في عصر الرقمنة، المشهد الجديد والآفاق المنتظرة. وقد قسمت هذه المداخلة إلى 4 محاور. فأما المحور الأول فحاولت أن أجيب عن سؤال مركزي: لماذا نتحدث عن الحوار بين أتباع اليوم وخاصة في هذا العصر، عصر الرقمنة؟ المحور الثاني ويتعلق بالمشهد الجديد للحوار بين أتباع الأديان في عصر الرقمنة. أما المحور الثالث فهو يتعلق بحتمية تصحيح مسار الحوار بين أتباع الأديان. والمحور الرابع آفاق الحوار المنتظرة بين أتباع الأديان. فأما الحديث عن المحور الأول وإجابة عن ذلك السؤال: لماذا نتحدث عن الحوار بين أتباع الأديان اليوم في عصر الرقمنة؟ فلا ريب أن العالم اليوم أمسى قرية كونية صغيرة حقيقة، لأنه وهذا يتطلب منه التفاعل والتعاون والتعارف والتضامن واللقاء والتواصل بين أفراده جميعا، وعليه لا بد من وجود الحوار لكي نتواصل رغم اختلاف الأديان ورغم اختلاف الثقافات واختلاف الحضارات. كذلك فإنه في عصرنا اليوم حقيقة نجد أن مخزون العداوة والتنافر ما زال قويا، ومشاعر الخوف والريبة والتوجس بين الأفراد والجماعات والدول ما زالت طاغية حقيقة هذه المشاعر الخوف. فحري بنا إذن أن نتحاور وأن نقترب من هذا الأمر. كذلك فإن العلاقات الاجتماعية والعلاقات الاقتصادية والعلاقات السياسية وغيرها بين الدول والأفراد جميعا حقيقة ما زالت تحتاج إلى تقارب وإلى عيش مشترك، وهذا أمر ييسره الحوار، ومن ثمة يبدو الحوار ضرورة ماسة ولازما أكيدا لابد من وجوده. إضافة إلى هذا فإننا نجد أن العلماء يؤكدون على قيمة التحاور بين الأديان، فكما يقول مثلا اللاهوتي الشهير هانس كونغ: لن يكون هناك سلام بين الأمم ما لم يكن هناك سلام بين الأديان، ولن يكون هناك سلام بين الأديان ما لم يكن هناك حوار بين الأديان. إذن كما يلاحظ أن الحوار أمس حقيقة اليوم يعني ضرورة ملحة، لا فقط بين أتباع الأديان جميعا، وإنما حتى بين أتباع الدين الواحد، بين أصحاب القبلة الواحدة وبيننا المسلمين اليوم مثلا. فالمسلمون اليوم يحتاجون حقا إلى تقارب وإلى تواصل وإلى حوار، خاصة وأننا نلاحظ أن هناك مذاهب شتى وفرق شتى وإيديولوجيات وأفكار وتصورات مختلفة، وبناء عليه لا بد من هذه آلية التقارب بين الشعوب وبين الأفراد وبين حتى أتباع الأديان الواحد كما قلت، لأنه بهذه آلية الحوار فقط نستطيع أن نتجاوز كل عوائق التواصل. وعليه فعلى المسلم اليوم وعلى كافة البشر عموما أن يعوا أن الأمور المشتركة بين الجميع وبين المختلفين جميعا هي أكبر مما يفرقهم. لماذا؟ لأن المجتمع البشري كما قلت أمسى مسكنا واحدا تقاربت فيه الديانات. أيضا فإنه الحوار أحيانا وضرورة الحوار وضرورة العمل بالحوار أيضا تتبدأ في أن الحوار تغيرت في عصره الجديد، في هذا المشهد الجديد اليوم تغير مفهومه من قيمة أساسية للتواصل بين الشعوب إلى قيمة توظف أحيانا للاعتماد في بعض السياسات والإيديولوجيات، وهذا ما يبخس حقيقة من قيمة الحوار ويجعلنا نراجع أهمية الحوار ونراجع مفهوم الحوار لنعتمده حقيقة بين المختلفين جميعا. فنحن مثلا هنا في تونس وفي شمال إفريقيا وفي إفريقيا عموما نحن قريبون جدا حقيقة من أوروبا، ومضطرون إلى التعاون معهم ومضطرون إلى التواصل السياسي والتواصل الاجتماعي والتواصل الاقتصادي وكل هذا حقيقة. ومن ثمة لكي نتواصل ونحقق ذلك التعاون الاقتصادي والاجتماعي وغيره لابد من آلية الحوار. فكأن الحوار حقيقة أمسى قدرا مسطرا وضرورة لا يمكن أن نستغني عنها. الاستغناء عن ذلك هو حقيقة رمي في عماية وهو أمر غير مترشد، ولذلك لا بد من هذه الحوار ولا بد من معرفة هذا الآخر فعلى مستوى الثقافة وعلى مستوى الاقتصاد وعلى مستوى التعامل لكي نعرفه حقيقة. كما أن الحوار يقرب الناس ويطلعهم حقيقة على ثقافة الآخر، لأنه عملية المداراة وعملية الإكراه وإدخال الناس في بعض الثقافات بشكل ضاغط وبصورة إكراهية حقيقة هذا يخلق لنا منافقين وكذابين ولا يخلق لنا حقيقة صادقين ومؤمنين بتلك الثقافة الجديدة. فضلا عن هذا فحينما نعود إلى نصوصنا الدينية إلى القرآن الكريم وإلى السنة النبوية المشرفة فإننا نجد في تلك النصوص من الآيات ومن الأحاديث ما يشجعنا على الحوار. ويكفي أن نذكر بقوله تعالى: يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. صدق الله العظيم. فهذه الآية الكريمة تدعو إلى الحوار وتدعو إلى التواصل وإلى التعارف مع الآخر، وكذلك آيات أخرى ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي أحسن. كذلك قوله عز وجل ولا تجادل أهل الكتاب إلا بالتي أحسن. فهذه الآيات جميعا حقيقة تدعون إلى التواصل مع الآخر، إلى التحاور معه بناء، لأن هناك مستند وهناك تشجيع من القرآن بل وحث من القرآن الكريم ومن السنة النبوية المشرفة على أن نقترب من هذا الآخر ونعيش معه العيش المشترك الذي يمكننا من التواصل ومن أداء رسالة مهمة ورسالة وجودية هي خلافة الله على الأرض. كذلك حينما ننظر إلى الآخر وإلى نصوصه الدينية نجد المختلف عنا، نجد في نصوصه ما يمكن أن يشجع. فنجد مثلا في رسالة يوحنا الأولى مثلا قوله إن قال أحد إني أحب الله وأبغض أخاه فهو كاذب، لأن من لا يحب أخاه الذي أبصره كيف يقدر أن يحب الله الذي لم يبصره. فهناك إذن نصوص وفقرات في نصوص المقدسة لدى الآخر هي حقيقة يمكن أن نعتمدها وتشجع على الحوار وأن نقترب من هذا الآخر ونبين له ثقافتنا ونبين له أننا أصحاب سلام وأننا أصحاب وئام وأننا نريد التعايش وأننا نريد التواصل والتعاون والتعارف مع هذا الآخر لنعيش في سلام ووئام جميعا بين البشر. إضافة إلى ذلك فإننا حينما ننظر إلى تاريخنا عموما نجد أن فيه جملة من الأحداث التاريخية المستهجنة وجملة من الأحداث التاريخية التي يعني مستهجنة وأخرى إيجابية. نحاول أن ندعم تلك المواقف الإيجابية وندعمها، وتلك المواقف المستهجنة والسلبية نحاول أن نتجنبها لكي نتواصل جميعا. هذا باختصار سادتي الأفاضل. حاولت أن أبين في البداية لماذا نطرق هذا باب الحوار بين أتباع الأديان. فضلا هناك إضافة إلى ذلك حقيقة هناك جملة من الاعتبارات الأخرى، ولكنني حاولت الاختصار طبعا نظرا لضيق الوقت. أما المحور الثاني أيها الأفاضل والذي يعنون بالمشهد الجديد للحوار بين الأديان، يعني كيف نجد الحوار بين أتباع الأديان اليوم؟ هل هو يؤدي مهمته كما يجب أن يكون؟ هل يحقق التواصل المنشود أم لا؟ حقيقة نجد أن الحوار الذي يمثل حلما ويمثل آلية مهمة للتقارب بين الشعوب حقيقة يشهد ضعفا على مستوى التواصل، ضعفا على مستوى الفاعلية، ضعفا على مستوى الممارسة. ولذلك لابد من محاولة إعادة طرح هذا الحوار ومحاولة إعادة تفعيل وتشجيع وحث أصحاب هذا الحوار وأصحاب هذا المشروع. لماذا؟ لأن نصوصنا الدينية كما قلت تدعون إلى ذلك، فضلا عن تلك الاعتبارات الفكرية والتاريخية وغيرها التي تحثنا على الحوار. فالله سبحانه وتعالى يقول قل يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم ألا نعبد إلا الله. فهذه دعوة إلى الاطلاع على الآخر، إلى التحاور مع الآخر. ولكن للأسف حينما نعود إلى واقعنا المعيش وإلى المشهد اليوم نجد أن الحوار حقيقة في واد وقيمه ومقاصده السامية في واد آخر. فلقد استغل حقيقة الحوار في مشهده الجديد اليوم، استغل يعني في تحقيق أغراض سياسية وأغراض إيديولوجية يعني بعيدة كل البعد عن المقاصد الأساسية الأولى. استغل الحوار من أجل التبشير، استغل الحوار من أجل النواحي السياسية ومن أجل أغراض سياسية وغيرها. فهذا كله يدفعنا إلى مراجعة هذه القيمة وكيف نفعلها على أرض الواقع. فضلا عن ذلك يعني فقد حولت يعني مقاصد الحوار اليوم من الهدف الإنساني النبيل إلى خدمة مخططات غربية وسياسية وإيديولوجية كما قلت. إضافة إلى ذلك أمس الحوار اليوم يتناول أو يعالج قضايا بعيدة كل البعد عما كنا نأمله من الحوار. يعني أمس الحوار اليوم يتعلق بأحاديث مثل فصل الدين عن الدولة، مثل محاولة إبعاد الدين وغير ذلك، مثل محاولة كيف يمكن أن يحقق المحتل يعني والمستعمر، كيف يمكن أن يحقق أغراضه في تلك الأرض. فكأنه الحوار حولت وجهته من محاولة الحرص على الحوار ومن محاولة الحرص من التقارب بين البشر إلى محاولة كيف يمكن أن نخضع البشر. وهذه هي المفارقة العجيبة التي تدفعنا حقيقة إلى مراجعة هذه المسائل. أيضا الحوار أمسى اليوم في مشهده الجديد أمسى يستخدم تلك القيم الإنسانية مثل الدفاع عن حقوق الإنسان، ومثل قضايا الفقر وقضايا الأمية وقضايا العدالة والمساواة، وكأن أصحاب هذه الدعوات حقيقة هم الذين جاءوا بهذه القيم، ولا علاقة لهذه القيم بالدين. المفترض أن الحوار يركز على قضايا مهمة تنفع الإنسانية وتنفع العالم برمته، لا أن يأتي بالحديث وبالمنادات عن قيم ومبادئ هي ليست غريبة عن ديننا الإسلامي، وليست غريبة عن واقعنا المعيش أحيانا. فنحن نحاول أن نكرس وأن معناها نحقق معناها حقوق الإنسان، وأن ندفع الفقر وتلك والأمية وغير ذلك، وأن نحقق العدالة والمساواة على أرض الواقع. إذن الحوار اليوم في مشهده الجديد حقيقة يوظف وتحول وجهته من الحديث عن قضايا وأهداف إنسانية نبيلة إلى توظيفات سياسية وعلمانية وإيديولوجية وغيرها بعيدة كل البعد عن المقاصد الأخرى كما قلت. ونتيجة لهذا حقيقة أمس الحوار يواجه جملة من الانتقادات ومن التشويهات، لأن هذه الوجهة لأنه لم يحافظ على مقاصده التي من أجلها أسس، ولذلك أصبح معناها ينتقد وأصبح يشوه ويطلق عليه على أساس أنه آلية للانسلاخ عن الهوية، للانسلاخ عن الدين، وليس آلية للتقارب. فهذه مسألة إذن أثارت، أو هذه التشويهات وهذه الانتقادات أمست تتحدث عن مصداقية الحوار ومدى صدقنا في تطبيق الحوار، وخاصة كما قلت يعني أنه نتيجة هذا الصدام ونتيجة هذه السيطرة للإيديولوجيات وللسياسات على الحوار، على تفعيل آلية الحوار عموما. من المشاهد أيضا التي نلاحظها اليوم في العصر الجديد في مستوى الحوار أن هناك صراع كبير وتنافس كبير بين ما يمكن أن يسمى بالأديان التقليدية وبالأديان السماوية، وبين هذه شبه الأديان أو الأفكار أو الفلسفات التي أصبحت تنادي بضرورة أن تطبق قبل حتى الأديان السماوية. فهناك نوع من التنافس، ولذلك لابد أن نستخدم يعني هذا الحوار كآلية لتقديم الأديان الفكرية والإيديولوجيات، وهذه الأديان شبه ما يمكن أن نسميه أيضا بشبه الأديان مقارنة مع الأديان الحقيقية. وكما نلاحظ يعني في كل الاختلافات في كل المنافسات نلاحظ أن الحوار اليوم أمسى يوظف في غير سياقه، أمسى يوظف في غير المنهج الذي يجب أن يكون، ولذلك لابد أن نراجع نحن هذا الأمر. يعني من المشاهد كذلك ومن الصور التي أمسى عليها الحوار اليوم في مشهده الجديد هو أنه أمسى الحوار آلية للانتصار ولتحقيق النصر، وليس آلية ولتحقيق النصر في الحرب، وليس آلية لتحقيق السلم، وليس آلية لإيقاف الحرب. فكأنه معناها عوض أن نلتجئ إليه ونحن في مستوى المساواة، في مستوى يعني الأخوة الإنسانية، أمسى القوي يطبقه ليفرض آراءه، بينما أمسى الضعيف يلتجئ إليه لأنه لا سلاح له ولا إمكانية له إلا هذا السلاح، سلاح الحوار. فكأنها الصورة حقيقة تغيرت جميعا. فضلا عن ذلك فإن الحوار اليوم أمسى كما قلت يعالج قضايا بعيدة كل البعد عن القضايا التي تهم الإنسانية عموما، وأمسى يعالج قضايا معناها تواجه الدين، وكأنه يرد على تلك التشويهات التي تشوه صورة الدين في مفهومه المطلق عموما. يعني مثلا أمسينا نتحدث اليوم عن صدام حضارات، عن نهاية تاريخ، عن أطروحات هجوم شبه الأديان على الأديان التقليدية، عن الضرورة كيف يمكن أن أفرض وأن أفهم الناس لا أن أفهمهم، أن أفهم الناس لا أن أفهمهم. يعني هذه حقيقة تحتاج إلى مراجعة. كما أمس أيضا يعني الحوار يتناول أو مواضيع أخرى بعيدة وهامشية كل البعد عما يجب أن يكون. يعني القضايا مثلا العقدية الأساسية التي يجب أن تعالج أمست في مرحلة أو في مرتبة أخيرة مقارنة مع قضايا أخرى تخدم الإيديولوجيات وتخدم السياسات. فلا بد إذن وتخدم التنصير وتخدم التبشير وكل تلك الأشياء. فلا بد إذن من مراجعة هذا السياق. الآن ونحن إزاء هذه الصور القاتمة وإزاء هذا المشهد القاتم للحوار بين الأديان، حقيقة كيف يمكن لنا أن نصحح الحوار؟ وهنا أتحدث عن المحور الثالث. ما الذي يجب أن أفعله لكي نصحح هذا المشهد ولنعيد للحوار بريقه وألقه وأهدافه الأساسية لكي يستعيد الفاعلية متاعه ويثمر من جديد بإذن الله تعالى؟ لابد بداية من أن تكون النية خالصة لله عز وجل، وأن يكون الغرض من اعتماد الحوار غرضا صحيحا يخدم الإنسانية، بعيدا كل البعد عن الاستغلال وعن الاحتلال وعن التبشير وعن توظيف الإيديولوجيا وعن توظيف السياسة وغير ذلك. فلا بد أن يكون الحوار قيمة إنسانية يدرك أهمية الأخوة الإنسانية وأهمية الآخر المختلف عنا لكي نستطيع أن نتواصل معه ونقترب منه بشكل كبير. أيضا لابد من الإيمان بأن الحوار بين أتباع الأديان هو وسيلة لتحقيق التواصل والتقارب وتحقيق العيش المشترك، وليس وسيلة للتنافر، وليس وسيلة لفرض القوة، وليس وسيلة للتوسل إلى القوي الذي هو مولع، الذي في الحقيقة الضعيف الذي هو مولع بمتابعة الغالب كما يقول ابن خلدون. فالحوار هو آلية للتقارب وليس آلية لاستجداء، إن شئنا لاستجداء السلام ولاستجداء إيقاف الحرب. فلا بد أن تعاد هذه المفاهيم حول آلية الحوار بإذن الله تعالى. كما أنه لا بد أن نؤكد على أن الحوار ليس وسيلة للانسلاخ عن الهوية وعن الدين، وإنما وسيلة للتعرف على الآخر، للاقتراب من الآخر. أيضا لابد من الإيمان بأن المشكلة اليوم ليست مشكلة أديان، وليست في الحوار في حد ذاته إذا ما وقفنا على مفهومه الحقيقي، وإنما الإشكال اليوم في تلك التشويهات التي تشوه الدين من ناحية وتشوه وتوظف الحوار من ناحية أخرى. فلا بد إذن أن نعيد نحن ونؤكد على أن الحوار هي رسالات من السماء جاءت إلى هداية البشر وجاءت إلى دعوة البشر إلى الاقتراب. قل يا أيها الناس تعالوا إلى كلمة قل يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم ألا نعبد إلا الله. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. فالهدف هو التعارف، والهدف هو التواصل، والهدف هو التضامن من أجل عبادة الله عز وجل، من أجل الارتقاء والالتقاء جميعا في مستوى عبادة الله عز وجل، وأن نوظف الحوار في سياقات أخرى وفي مناهج أخرى. فهذا تحويل لمفهوم الحوار وتحويل لوظيفة الحوار من وظيفة إنسانية دينية إلى وظيفة سياسية إيديولوجية. وهذا ما أهلك البشر وهذا ما أهلك الإنسانية، لأنها أخلت بقيمة الحوار وبقيمة بقيمة التواصل والتقارب بين البشر. ونتيجة هذا التوظيف ونتيجة هذا الابتعاد عن المقصد الأساس للحوار هو أننا أصبحنا نتحدث عن مفاهيم أن الدين أمسى أفيونا للشعوب، وأن الإله معناها قد مات كما يقول نيتشه. وأيضا أصبحنا نتحدث عندما كما يقول كتاب شارل كيمبل، عندما يكون الدين شيطانيا خبيثا أو شريرا 5 علامات خطر. وأصبح نتحدث هل الدين يقتلنا؟ العنف في الكتاب المقدس والقرآن. وأصبح نتحدث عن الإله أو الإله الوهم. ففي الحقيقة نحتاج إلى إعادة هذا الفهم وإلى إعادة تصحيح هذا المسار، مسار الحوار، لكي لا نسقط في مثل هذه المفاهيم وفي مثل هذه التشويهات التي طالت الأديان وطالت الحوار من ناحية أخرى. فضلا عن ذلك يجدر بنا أن نعي أهمية هذا الآخر، وأنه حر في التعبير عن آرائه وإن كان رأيه مختلفا عما لدينا، وأنه حر ويستطيع أن يعبر كما يشاء، وعلينا أن نفهمه كما هو وليس كما نريد نحن أن نفهمه. يعني هذا أمر مهم جدا، أن الإنسان أن تحاول أن تقترب منه لندعه يعني يعرف بنفسه كما هو، ولا أن نحاول أن نفرض عليه أفكارنا على اعتبار أننا نمتلك الحقيقة. الحقيقة نسبية في نهاية المطاف. لابد أن نقرب له أفكاره ونعرف له ما لدينا ليقترب منا بسلاسة وبلين وبحوار. وهذا هو مسلك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، فلم يحاول أن يفرض الدين على الآخر، بل أن القرآن الكريم يقول لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين من الرشد، قد تبين الغي لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي. فالإنسان المسلم وهو يحاور الآخر عليه أن يترك الحرية لهذا الآخر لكي يعرفه كما هو لا كما نحن أن نريد، وبدون ضغط وبدون إكراه وبدون شعور بالنقص أيضا أو احتقار للآخر. أيضا لابد أن نعي بأن التجربة اليوم، تجربة الحوار بيننا وبين المختلفين عنا جميعا، هي تجربة لم تحقق المبتغى ولم تحقق الأهداف المرجوة منها. فلا بد أن نراجع هذه التجربة، تجربة الحوار بيننا وبين الآخر، ونحاول أن نقيم السلبيات وأن نقيم الإيجابيات لنتفادى السلبيات، لنؤسس جسرا جديدا مع الآخر، جسر يقربنا من الآخر لا أن يبعدنا عنه. ولنعمل نحن أن نغرس قيمة الحوار منذ البدء في عائلاتنا، في أسرنا، في مجتمعنا، لنصل في نهاية المطاف إلى مجتمع إنساني مؤمن بالحوار يستطيع أن يقترب من الآخر ويقربه، وأن نستفيد أيضا من تلك التجارب، من تجارب الروحية التي حققت فعلا هذا المبتغى وتجاوزت هذه الحدود الثقافية لتسمو جميعا وتصل في نهاية المطاف إلى الإقرار بأن الإنسانية من كلهم لآدم وآدم من تراب، وأنهم كلهم إخوة، وعليهم أن يقتربوا ويتعارفوا ويتعاونوا جميعا في تأسيس حضارة وفي تأسيس تقدم. ولكن هذه المعاني قد تبدو مثالية وقد تبدو نظرية، ولكن المهم بالنسبة إلينا اليوم في عصرنا الجديد وفي عصر الرقمنة أن نؤمن بهذه القيمة، وأن علينا أن نضع الحجر الأولى للقيام ولبناء هذا الحوار مع الإنسانية عموما. فمسيرة الألف خطوة تبدأ بخطوة واحدة، وهذه الخطوة الأولى هو أن نؤمن بقيمة الحوار ونغرس هذا الحوار في أطفالنا، ومن ثم نصل بإذن الله عز وجل إلى ذلك المبتغى الذي نريده. أيضا لابد أن نخلص أفكارنا من كل التشويهات ومن كل الرواسب والعداوات التي حصلت في تاريخ الإنسانية، لننظر إلى المستقبل بروح وبأمل جديد يمكن أن نقترب بإذن الله عز وجل، وأن نعتمد في كل ذلك القيم الإنسانية وسلاح المعرفة والعقلانية، وأن نحاول أن نتسلح بالحرية في اتخاذ المواقف بدون إكراه أو بدون تسلط وغير ذلك. حقيقة الإنسانية اليوم مطالبة بمراجعة مفهوم الحوار وكيفية تنزيل الحوار في مشهده اليوم على مستوى الواقع، على مستوى الممارسة، لأنه بذلك نستطيع أن نتفادى السلبيات ونعمل على دعم الإيجابيات، من ثم نقترب من بعضنا بل ونستطيع أن نفهم هذا المختلف، لماذا هو مختلف عنا، ولماذا لا يريد أن يسمعنا، ولماذا يكرس هذه العداوة معنا. نحن نحتاج إلى إعادة مفهوم الحوار وإلى تنزيل قيمه ومعطياته على أرض الواقع تنزيلا عقلانيا. سلاحنا في ذلك سلاح المعرفة والمحبة للإنسانية، لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. اسمحوا لي سادتي الأفاضل بأن ننهي هذا اللقاء، ولكن لأؤكد في نهاية المطاف على أن الحوار ممكن ما توفرت الإرادة الصادقة والفعل الخالص والإنجاز الواعد. فلا بد أن نغير ما بأنفسنا لنغير حقيقة الحوار وكيفية تنزيل الحوار. من ثم يتغير التعامل بين البشر وتتغير الإنسانية من مستوى العداوة والكراهية إلى مستوى المحبة والإخاء. وعذرا على هذا الاختصار، وشكرا لكم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah Sayyidina Muhammad ibni Abdillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawalah. Amma ba'd. Khawatal mukarramin wal musyarikin fi hadina nadwah ad-dawliyah wa abil akhas yakni Sadatu Ustadz Abdul Qadir An-Nafati wa jami'il muhadirin. Anna atakallam an mawdu' yakni ri'ayatuddin fi daulah demokratiyah namudatan fi Indonesia. Kama na'lamu jami'an anna aktsarul muslimin fi anhil alam al-an yakni hum ya'isuna tahta daulah al-jumriyah atau tahta daulah demokratiyah. Wahal idza nahnu na'ish fi hadhihi daulah san nankus atau satungkos yakni fi tatbiq ad-din atau fi amal yakni nahnu kal muslimin fi dinina wa bidzalik yakni anna atakalam fi hadil nudwah kaifa yakni ri'ayatuddin laisa bi makna ri'ayatuddin yakni ad-din la tuhtas ila ri'ayah walakin ini dinana yakni Islamuna fi daulah demokratiyah. Kama na'lamu jami'an yakni al-an al-Indonesia كثير من يقول في مستوى دولي أن الجمهورية إندونيسيا الآن أصبحت الثالث أكبر دول ديمقراطية في العالم بعد 12 سنة من العملية الإصلاحية الشاملة. ولذا يعني كثير من يقول هل ديمقراطية تتنافى مع تعليم الإسلام القيامه؟ وكما نعلم أن من ضمن القيم الأساسية يعني احترام التعددية. Indonesia, بلادنا Indonesia, المؤسسون هذا البلد هذه البلاد يعني هم يتفقون ويتصورون يعني في إخراج أو في يعني Indonesia yakni tusama Pancasila atau mabadi'ul khamsah. Al-awal yakni arubaniyatul muwahhadah, at-tsaniyah yakni al-insaniyah al-adiyah al-muhaddabah, at-tsalisah al-wihdah al-Indonesia, at-tsalisah as-sa'biyah allati takuduhu al-hikmah ar-rasidah ala tariqi syurra, al-khamisah al-adalah al-istimaiyah ala kafati sya'bil Indonesia. Hadil mabadi asah alladhi yu'assuna min qabl. Takawan hadil mabadi tarmasu fi safinatin Indonesia allati tarkabuha mi'atan wa thalasun milyunan minal basar fil qabail al-mukhtalifah mislu Jawa ya wa Sumatera wal alwan wal adyan al-mukhtalifah aidan yakni dinul Islam wa dinul Masyihi ya wa ghairihima. Hadil mabadi ya'uduha ad-dustur Indonesia sanata alaf wa tis'ah mi'ah khamsah arba'in. Fusilat hadil mabadi hada al-muhim tis'u wa isrina minha yani al-muhim fihna yani ar-rubaniyata al-muwahhadah allati tatman ad-daulah khuriyata kulli muwatinin fi itinaki dinihi wa fi syiarihi. Wa bihadza yani hadil mabadi wa fusilat yani 29 faslan nahnu yumkin awun nahish fi biladina Indonesia demokratia nastati riayah atau riayatud dinina wa bidzalik yakni fihi maqal hal idza istihnat ila usuli syariah wa qawaidha hal yunfi anha madinatiha la al-haqiqah la. Innal istinad atau innal isnad ila syariah la yang tadi antakuna daulatan teokratiyah. Limada? Lianna al-qistol awfar fil ahkami siyasiyah syariah walidinador au bil istihad. Lidhalika karena tilkal ahkam qabilah litaghayyur bihasbi tatawur wa muqtadaduruf wal ahwal fi hayatil muslimin asiyasiyah wal iktisadiyah wal istimiyah. Fanusus syar'iyah lam tufsih masalan fi mabadi dusturiyah ya al-qadhaiyah bitandimi riasatil muslimin wa tariqah ittikhadhi ra'isil wa uslub amalihi wastirati sya'bi ya fil hukmi ishaman warqabatan. Wa qad istashhada al fuqaha fi hadzal majal fi kutubihim al-kasirah yakni al-qadimah hunaka katsir minal ahkam ru'ya fiha ahwalu zamanihim wa mastada'ihi bi masalihihim. Nahnu nafham jami'an yani bi anna syariah Islamiyah yani bainal qawaid kulliyah wal mabadi' ammah wa takallafat as-sunnah nabawiyah bitanjiliha ala waqi'in fi mustama' bi durufihi wa mulabasitihi litakun nibrosan tahdil akal fi fahmi kulliyati syariah an-nadhariyah wa takun manhajan sadidan linnadhar fikhi wa huwa yahulu tikal ma'ani al-mujarrad ila waqi'it tarihi. Masalan, fal Islam lam yu'ayyin yani ay syaklil hukumah au nidhamil hukmi lakinnahu bayana al-adla fi huwa al-manas tanbani aliyasiyatatul hukumah wa sukutin nusus ini wa sukutin nusus andalika manuton bil hikam al-kathir. Masalan, raf'ul haras al muslimin fi jami' unsur au irha'ul adli li qatatil aqli siyasi ya tajriyah asyasiyah wa nuha. Fadaulah fil Islam yani idzan tatamat bistati tadriyah wasi'ah fima layatihi nas khasun au nadirun yu'tabaru bihi minan nuwu at-tarbiyah wasaqfiyah wasiyasah. Yaqulu ada ulamaul kabir yakni min madhab Hambali yakni Ibnu Aqil yakni fi ta'rifi asiyasah syariah lil Islam asiyasah makana ada mimcidan makana fi'lan yakunu ma'ahun nas aqrab ila shalah wa ab'ad anil fasad wa illam yadha ar-rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam wala nazal bihi wahyun. Ada idza nahnu masalahnya ini fil hukumah atau masalah fi masalati daulah yakni al-muhim hunaka yakunu fi'lan aqrabun nas ila shalah wa ab'ad ilal fasad walau kana Rasulullah SAW lam yadha au walam dalbihi wahyu. Fatabi'atu tasni' Islam taqtadi iktidaan mantikian qabla an takun iktidaan syar'iyan. Lidzalika anna jami'atikal ma'ani al-maqsudi la yumkinu tahqiquha kharija daulah. Wa daulah kama qala Muhammad Iqbal muhawalah tabdulu qasda tahwilil mabadi wal misal wal qiyam. Nilai-nilai. Ila makaniyah zamaniyah ay tanziliyah min ufukiha an-nadhari wa tajridi ila waqi'in madiyin tarihin. Fatabi'atu tasnil Islam taqtadi iktidaan mantikian qabla an takun iktidaan syar'iyan. Lidzalik anna jami'atikal ma'ani al-maqsudati Ya. La yumkin tahaqququha kharija daulah. Wa daulah kama qala Muhammad Iqbal muhawalah tubdal qasda tahwilil mabadi wal misal wa qiyam ila qawi makaniyah zamaniyah. Nahnu idza naqra yakni tarikh lam takun daulah fi tarikhil Islam daulah diniyah fahasab faqat la bal tatamatta bisolahiyati siyasiyah ya wa tazawwadu fi himayatil masolih wa huriyatil madaniyah sawaun kanu muslimin au kitabin au ghairihim la farqa baina muslimin al-muhim idza hunaka fi daulah yakni lima salhati daulah huriyatul madaniyah muslim kana au ghaira muslimin wa tarikh khairu dalil ala dalik yakni fi Madinah Munawwarah fi zaman Rasul wa Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam hinama jaa fil Madinah huwa awaluman asasa al-mujtama' asyasi fil Madinah harosa Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala taksisi daulah yakni wifqa mabadi tahtarimu tata'addudiyah ad-diniyah hada yatajalla fi misakil Madinah allati ukirat yakni at-tasawi li abna'il Madinah fil huquq wal wajibat al-ammah wa ta'sisi mabadi'il adli wal insaf bainahum wa hadza misakul dustauran lil ladina yaskununa al Madinah ada yakni Rasulullah yakni awal muassisi mujtama' siyasi fi Madinah. Qala Rasulullah SAW fi hadal kitab hada kitab Muhammadin Nabi SAW bainal mu'minin wal muslimin min Quraisyin wa Yasrib wa man tabi'ahum wa lahiqa bihim wa jahada ma'ahum innahum ummatun wahidah min dunin nas wa inna yahuda bani auf ummah wah ma'al mu'minin ada wa inna yahuda bani auf ummatun ma'al mu'minin wal yahud dinuhum wal muslimun dinuhum ya wa anfusim illa man dolima wa atim ini yakni tahqiqul adalah atau tahqiqul adli fi abna'il mustama atau fi abna'id daulah una ya Fabidalik yakni fi wasikul Madinah aidan wa inna yasrif haram jawfuha li ahli hadal kitab wa innal jarih nafsul jarih la yaduru wa innahu man kharaja minal Madinah amin wa man qa'ada amin illa man dolima au atima wa Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam ihtatama hadza yakni al-udwan fil mujtama au fi daulah yakni laisa binadhari ad-din wala ghairiha walakin binisbah ila man dhalim wa bidzalik ihtatama Rasulullah sallam fi hadil wasiqah wala udwana ila ala dhalimin ada yakni wa bidzalik ana ahtatim bi anna nahnu kal muslimin fi ai anha'il alam idza na'is fi yakni daulah demokratiyah atau jumhuriyah insyaallah nahnu nastat riayat dinina yakni lianna syariah wal islam يعني بين المبادئ العامة هذا أهم شيء وتاريخ خير دليل بأن نحن كالمسلمين نستطيع يعني الحياة في أي مكان أو في أي دولة من أنحاء هذا العالم. شكرا لكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Hiểu quá phải không? Có gì câu
نعم، أسمعك أخي فؤاد. يعني السؤال الذي قد يكون فهمته يعني علاقة الحوار بالديمقراطية. نعم، طبعا الحوار هو قيمة إنسانية، قيمة إنسانية لا يمكن أن نستغني عليها في أي مجال، سواء كانت الديمقراطية التي هي تعبير عن إرادة شعب، وهذه الإرادة الشعبية وهذه الإرادة الإنسانية لا يمكن أن تصل أي فكرة أو أي تصور للآخر ما لم نعتمد هذه الآلية، آلية الحوار. فالحوار حقيقة هو، نستطيع أن نقول، هو الذي يكسب الإنسان إنسانيته، بمعنى لا قيمة للإنسان بدون هذه القيمة، قيمة الحوار. فقيمة الحوار هي التي تميز الإنسان عن بقية الكائنات، وهي ضرورة يجب أن تعتمد في السياق السياسي وفي السياق الديمقراطي وفي سياق التطبيق ومعرفة إرادة الشعب ومعرفة كيف يمكن أن ندرك ونحيط بكل معناها متطلبات وطلبات الشعب، وكذلك في بقية السياقات الأخرى، في السياق الديني وفي السياق الاجتماعي وفي السياق السياسي وغير ذلك. فلا غنى عن الحوار، فهي علاقة نستطيع أن نقول العلاقة بين الحوار والديمقراطية علاقة متينة، علاقة جدلية، لا يمكن أن نستغني عن هذا الحوار، ولا يمكن أن تتحقق الديمقراطية في غياب هذه القيمة، قيمة التحاور، قيمة معرفة الآخر، قيمة معرفة يعني التعارف والتواصل مع الآخر، كلها حقيقة. وهذه نقطة مهمة اسمحوا لي بأن أبينها، بأن القيم مترابطة، القيم الإنسانية مترابطة مع بعضها البعض. فحينما نتحدث عن الحوار نحن نتحدث بالضرورة عن المحبة، نحن نتحدث بالضرورة عن التعاون، نحن نتحدث بالضرورة عن التضامن والتواصل. فالقيم الإنسانية قيم متكاملة ومتكاتفة، وهي معناها كل مترابط. فهذا الكل المترابط يجب أن يكون في داخل الديمقراطية، لتكون الديمقراطية حقا يعني تعبيرا عن إرادة شعب وتعبيرا عن إرادة مجموعات إنسانية وغيرها. وشكرا لكم. الخامسة وربع. نعم. اسمحوا لي الأخوة الأفاضل، هل هناك سؤال آخر؟ يعني قبل أن نذهب ما زلنا لم نصلي الصبح، سنذهب صلاة الصبح.
طيب، شكرا جزيلا على هذه الفرصة السعيدة. شكرا على المحاضر أستاذ دكتور عبد القادر نفاتي، وكذلك دكتور تمييز محرم. هناك كلمات كثير جدا نافعا لنا طبعا.
شكرا جزيلا، وكل مودتي وكل محبتي إلى إندونيسيا كلها وإلى الإخوة الأفاضل في جميع الجامعة الإسلامية، وأدامكم الله وأعزكم الله وأدام سروركم وألقكم وحفظكم من كل سوء إن شاء الله.
وكذلك محبتنا لإخواننا في تونس وفي كل دول العالم الإسلامية.
شكرا لكم، شكرا لكم، وأنا أعتذر على شكرا لكم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. سؤالي هذا يتعلق عن التشدد الذي كان في بعض طائفة المسلمين في عصرنا اليوم. يعني هناك طائفة من المسلمين في هذا العصر يريدون أن يعملوا الإسلام بالتشدد. أحيانا نتفكر كأن هذا الفكر خير وجيد وكذلك كأنه الصواب، ولكن حينما ننظر إلى كيف روح الإسلام، كيف روح دين الإسلام، أنه لا يوافق بيسروا ولا تعسروا وغير ذلك. فلذا كيف رأي المتكلم بهذه المناسبة عن كيف مواجهة التشدد كأنه صواب كأنه خير، ولكنه يعاند بروح الإسلام، وكيف نطبق مقاصد الشريعة في عصرنا اليوم لكي حياتنا وكذلك كيف حياتنا في المجتمع في الدولة كذا يوافق بالروح الإسلام، يعني الدين السلام والدين المحبة ودين السلامة في الدنيا والآخرة. شكرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا جزيلا، الله يبارك فيك. شكرا. نعم، أستطيع أن يعني أجيب عن السؤال؟ نعم. الأخ الفاضل، أولا كل مودتي وكل محبتي، يعني ما فهمته كيف يمكن أن نلخص كيف نتعامل مع الفرق والجماعات المتشددة، ونحن نحمل رسالة محبة. أليس هكذا أخي فؤاد؟
نعم، صدقت يا دكتور عبد القادر.
هو فعلا الإسلام رسالة محبة وسلام، والنموذج الذي يجدر بنا أن نتبعه في هذا المقام مع هذه الجماعات المتشددة هو كيف كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يتصرف مع أولئك المعاندين. يعني وجد أناسا تعبد أصناما وبعيدة كل البعد عن الحقيقة، ووجد أصنام يعني تقوم بكل الأفعال السيئة، فكيف تعامل معهم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم؟ تعامل معهم بمودة ومحبة وبلين وبرفق. وحري بنا نحن أيضا أن نتعامل اليوم مع هذه الجماعات بالحوار وبالصبر وبالحلم. ادفع بالتي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. لا بد أن نعتمد هذه القيم، فليس الحوار مع الآخر مجرد كلام بسيط فقط، فلا بد لنا من الصبر في التحمل هذا الآخر وإن كان مختلفا عنا وإن كان بعيدا كل البعد عن الحقيقة. يعني مهم جدا أن نتحلى بالحوار، والمهم الأكبر أن نتحمل الصبر في عملية الحوار، فليست الأمر بصورة سهلة وهينة، خاصة مع أولئك المتشددين الذين يرفضونك بدءا. حينما نعود إلى سيرة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كيف تعامل مع المشركين ومع الكفار، نجد أنهم ضربوه وآذوه وأخرجوه من أحب أرض الله إليه، ولكن انظروا ماذا قال حينما عاد منتصرا إلى مكة، وإلى حينما عاد منتصرا بجيش عظيم وفتح مكة، قال لهم اذهبوا فأنتم الطلقاء. يعني انظروا إلى تلك السماحة. فهل نحن حقا نمتلك هذه السماحة والقوة لكي نمارسها اليوم مع هذه الجماعات؟ لا بد أن نحاول، وشرف الإنسان المحاولة. نعتذر. شكرا جزيلا. الله يبارك فيكم. كل تحيتي وكل مودتي إلى أندونيسيا، وشكرا لكم. شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Nah, jadi soal min Dr. Nurholis ini kaifa nahnu nata'amal ma'a mutasyadidin atau mutatarifin. Yani idza nahnu yani nastati ya taklim yakni yufarriq anna syariah yakni bainal qawaidil kulliyah wal mabadi'il ammah. Yani insyaallah manhaj yakni mutawassithah atau wasatiyah, yani laisa naktafi ila nusus al mawjudah walakin yakni nahnu nata'allam nadrus bi anna syariah fiha maqasid wa idza kanan yakni nahnu nadrus anna syariah fiha maqasid wa insyaallah manhaj yakni wasatiyah atau manhaj fil wasat nastati anuqabil yakni mutatarifin au mutasyadidin. Naam, nahnu la nungkir bi anna katsir minal muslimin yakni katsir laisa qul faqat yani yukafiruna ba'duhum ba'du hatta yuharibu ba'duhum ba'du binisbah au nisbatan au li fahmi tataruf fiddin au al-ghulu fiddin, yani nafham bi fahmil ghulu fiddin au tataruf mutasyadidin katsir. Yani wa bidzalik nahnu yani natrus au nastati ini dirasah al-usuliyah wa furu'iyah, jadi yubayyin bainal qawaid syariah. Masalan nahnu yakni fi Indonesia, masalah fi Indonesia fi tarikh yakni asdaqu dalil fi tarikh fi hinama yakni DITI ini saya bicara ya, DITI ingin mendirikan negara Islam Indonesia waktu dulu. Itu kan berat betul, jadi istilahnya berat betul jadi untuk umat Islam. Maka pemahaman seperti itu sebenarnya Indonesia ini adalah sudah saya katakan tadi adalah kalau kita jadi mengenai siasah syariah adalah
dan juga multikulturalisme itu merupakan proses mendapatkan data karena
ya bainal qawaid kuliah wal mabadi'il ammah li'annal pistol aufar ya fi siasati syariah, yakni walidun nadhar al-istihad. Ada mawjud fi ulama al-qudama fi kutubihim, yani wa tarikh, yani asdaqud dalil aidan, yani hina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam yuassis yani al-mujtama fil Madinah, yani yu'amil bainal muslimin wa ghairihim bil adli wal insaf, la yufarik baina muslimin wa ghairihim, walakin al aham fi huna, yakni man dzalima muslim au kafir. Bidalik yakni al mutasaddidin au mutatarifin, hada laisa min fahmina as-sahih anil Islam. Hada ya fi
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Dapatkah kamu bayangkan, kampus pionir pendidikan tinggi di Indonesia ini adalah kampusmu di masa depan. Kampus Islami yang terbuka bagi setiap warga negara, tempatmu belajar akan arti indahnya kebersamaan di tengah-tengah keragaman. Tanpa harus melupakan arti penting ketaatan pada nilai-nilai keislaman adalah kampus. Dapatkah kamu bayangkan mengecap pengalaman global di kampus mondial dengan beragam rekognisi internasional di program studi dengan akreditasi dan sertifikasi dari berbagai negara seperti Jepang, Korea, Inggris, hingga Amerika. Tempatmu mengeksplorasi ilmu pengetahuan lewat 8 pilihan fakultas dengan 48 program studi yang ditawarkan. Menjadi tempatmu menjemput impian sembari bebas menikmati petualangan kolaborasi dengan ilmuwan dunia. Seraya memperluas wawasan lewat berbagai program kemitraan yang tersebar dalam skala nasional maupun global. Dapatkah kamu bayangkan, kampus swasta paling lestari di Indonesia ini adalah tempatmu menempuh pendidikan tinggi. Kampus unggulan dengan berbagai inovasi berkelanjutan di berbagai bidang. Tempatmu belajar dengan bebas, di tengah rindangnya taman atau dalam nyamannya ruangan. Di luar maupun dalam jaringan, semuanya tak terbatas ruang kelas, tak terhalang jarak dan ruang. Semua disediakan untuk mendukungmu menjadi generasi muda yang aktif dan inovatif dengan keragaman pemikiran yang berbuah menjadi beragam apresiasi. Dapatkah kamu bayangkan jika kampusmu kelak adalah tempat yang mendukungmu sebagai intelektual, tidak hanya cerdas secara akal, namun juga cerdas spiritual di kampus swasta terbaik dengan akar yang kuat dalam tradisi kebebasan akademik, menjadikanmu berani mengekspresikan diri di tengah-tengah zaman yang penuh dengan kompetisi untuk berkontribusi akan solusi dari masalah yang dihadapi. Para sivitas akademika serta lebih dari 107.000 alumni pun telah membuktikan diri menjadi insan ulil albab yang mampu mengintegrasikan ilmu pengetahuan dan ajaran Islam dalam menebar kebermanfaatan di bermacam rumpun keilmuan. Dapatkah kamu bayangkan apabila kampusmu adalah salah satu kampus yang berlokasi di kota pendidikan ini, kota Yogyakarta dengan segudang cerita dan budaya yang beraneka ragamnya, dan Universitas Islam Indonesia hadir sebagai kampus Indonesiawi, berdiri berdampingan dengan ilmu pengetahuan, budaya, dan seni yang memberikan warna indah dalam harmoni. Kini berhenti membayangkan dan sudah saatnya bersiap untuk mewujudkan. Siapkah kamu? Karena kami siap untuk menunjukkan jalannya.
Izin lihat dulu ya.